Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the program. It's your host, Annie Haifong. As you can see, I am joined by two friends of the show, some of the best friends of the show. Actually, here we have Garland Nixon, independent journalist, geopolitical commentator, radio show host, and so much more. Garland, good to see you. How are you?
Hey, great. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course. And then we have, of course, Scott Ritter, former UN weapons inspector, U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer, author, journalist, and geopolitical commentator. Scott, good to be back with you.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, well, there's a lot to talk about, so let's get started. First, I mean, we're going to talk about Iran first, if you will. The situation has been kind of a whiplash of late over the last several weeks. But now, as we get into these talks, gentlemen, that are supposed to occur Friday, there's a long way to go until then. And it all began with the Trump administration getting very close to yet another strike attempt on Iran, but then pulling back when reports were that air defense systems were just not where they needed to be to protect Saudi Arabia, UAE, Israel, etc. Now we're having these negotiations supposedly to take place in Turkey, but there are escalations happening as we speak. The U.S. military has reportedly said, U.S. CENTCOM has said that they've shot down an Iranian drone that was approaching the USS Abraham Lincoln in the Arabian Sea. And this comes at the same time that Iranian, they call them gunboats, boats that were armed with small arms protecting territorial waters, challenged a Denmark-based U.S.-flagged tanker. Scott, I wanted to ask you your impressions of what's gone on over the last several days, 2 weeks, with regard to Iran. We had Trump get very close to strikes. It seems like he was briefed about something that led that Iran could do that led him to pull back for the moment. But now, as these talks are about to get underway, there's a lot of suspicion about this war still being very imminent. What's your impression of what has been going on?
I think we have to look at this through the lens of American domestic politics. This president's in a lot of trouble. I mean, he's in huge trouble. Going to lose the midterms if he's not careful. And losing the midterms, I don't mean just losing the House, which means he'll be impeached nonstop for the last half of his term, but he could lose the Senate, which means impeachment could lead to conviction, and then he's going to jail. And that's the reality that we have to look at this for, because, and then, we have to assess what a war with Iran would do to change this political aspect, because this is the only thing that's on this man's mind. If you think for a second that Donald Trump has the geopolitical acumen to sit there and talk about nuclear nonproliferation and balance of power, he doesn't. He's a bully, plain and simple. He's a might makes right kind of guy. He's a transactional businessman. But he's not into the nuances. So this nuclear negotiation that's going on, he doesn't even have a clue what they're talking about. This is about him preserving his status as a president who can govern effectively, or at least from his perspective effectively, for the full term. And in order to do that, he has to win the midterm elections. And attacking Iran after he told the people who elected him to office that he was a president of peace. I mean, my God, this is the man that was trying to get everybody to give him the Nobel Peace Prize, got the FIFA, first ever Peace Prize because he couldn't get the Nobel Peace Prize. Then he stole the Nobel Peace Prize from Machado. I mean, bullied her into giving it to him. You see where his brain is. This is a man who now says, I'm going to attack Iran. For what? Iran hasn't attacked the United States. Not even close. I mean, there's literally zero legal justification for what he's doing, or what he was talking about doing. But he's also, I got to be honest, he's a moral and physical coward. Okay, Donald Trump's going to fight nobody. Donald Trump's going to beat up people if people allow themselves to be beat up like Venezuela, kidnapping Maduro, bullying the rest of the country. Now we're putting an embassy back into Caracas. The CIA is running rampant. All right, that tells you a lot about Venezuela. I'm sorry, I know a lot of people here are supporting Venezuela. I see them as a bunch of pathetic people who just took a bunch of money and have sold out to the United States, because that's what happened. We've tried to do that in Iran. It didn't work. We tried in 2023 to orchestrate uprisings. The Iranian government put them down. We tried in June of last year to decapitate bombed the hell out of the Iranians, trying to kill their leadership after lying to them about the potential of negotiations. That didn't work. The Iranians recovered, and it was Benjamin Netanyahu who picked up the phone, called Donald Trump, begging for the war to come to an end, the war that they started. And then we just tried to orchestrate, a regime change operation, except it wasn't really. What we orchestrated was phase one of a regime change operation. To put this in perspective, the Israelis have told the United States that if anybody's to attack Iran, it has to be the whole show, meaning the end result has to be the end of the Iranian regime. They have to be gone. The Israelis have said we can absorb, we being Israel, can absorb about 700 Iranian ballistic missiles. After that, the pain gets too hard. So this has to be a quick war. You have to go in and you have to literally knock these guys out. They'll hit us with some missiles, but if you knock them out, that'll come to an end, and then we can declare victory. And so this is what happened. They orchestrated a financial crisis, crashed the rial. That was done by us, by the way, just so everybody knows. We crashed the Iranian currency, and we got the Iranians in the street, which they are wont to do in a functioning democracy. People tend to forget that aspect of Iran. It is a functioning democracy, demanding that the government do a better job. And then our thugs, Mossad thugs, CIA thugs, hijacked these protests to carry out violence. Now, the conventional wisdom is that this violence was taking place and we were supposed to come in and bomb to facilitate them taking over. In retrospect, I don't think that was fun because we didn't have any air defense assets in place at that time. Understand that. So we'd have gotten the snot kicked out of us if we had bombed them. What we were doing is collecting intelligence for the regime change operation. Because in order to change the regime, it's not just about targeting people we don't know where they are. It's about suppressing the assets that would be mobilized to deal with domestic unrest. Iran did a nationwide mobilization. We now know we had all our drones up in the air, all our collectors out there. We know who picked up the phone, who called whom, who mobilized, who responded where. We know the timings, the people, the units, the locations, etc. We have the whole database. So now, if we want to carry out a bombing operation to suppress the security apparatus, we have targets. And that's what it was, an intelligence collection operation. And now Trump is making the move to implement this. There's no reason for it other than he said he was going to do it. The problem is, as he's building this up and telling everybody, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, his experts are telling him, you can't do this. If you bomb them, you won't get the knockout blow. And then they're going to knock the crap out of Israel. They're going to kill a whole bunch of our people. And you're going to be sitting there holding an empty bag, and you're going to be disgraced. The bottom line is you're going to lose the midterm elections. And that's what's going on. These negotiations are a face-saving off-ramp to get Donald Trump, out of this. We're not going to bomb Iran. Of course, tomorrow we'll bomb them and everybody say, Scott, you said they were going to bomb Iran. I'm telling you right now, Donald Trump can't bomb Iran unless he wins. And he's not going to win, so he's not going to bomb Iran. Stop talking about the bombing of Iran. Isn't going to happen. We don't have the military resources in place. We don't have enough air defense. The Iranians have got our number. Now, there are stupid things going on, shooting down a drone and threatening ships. That's not going to lead to a war because Donald Trump can't go to war with Iran. He's going to lose the midterm and he's going to go to jail. And so what he's going to do is now say, I'm the peacemaker. I peace through strength. I threatened. The Iranians are at the table, and he's going to look for a nuclear deal. What kind of deal he ends up getting, or if he gets a deal, I don't know. But I just don't believe that he's going to bomb Iran, because if he bombs Iran, he loses. And again, I'll just reiterate the following point. This isn't a brave man here. This isn't a hero. This is a coward. This is a bully. And when people stand up to him, he backs down. He folds like a house of cards. And the Iranians, they're not Maduro. They're not the Venezuelans. They're not taking the CIA money. And they're standing up, and Trump's backing down.
Garland, your take.
Well, a couple of things. One of the things that I look at is the language that the U.S. traditionally uses, and that's if you look at the mainstream media, they say strike Iran. If you think about it, strike implies I could say I'm going to go into a bar and I'm going to strike that guy, that Hell's Angels member, right? Well, he's going to strike back, and so are his buddies. So the term strike Iran implies that the U.S. can do what we do to a lot of weak countries. We go in with impunity, suppress their air systems, fly over, boom, boom, drop a bunch of bombs and say, whatever, just back away, or, we kill a bunch of, sword fishermen or something in the Caribbean. Well, the problem is if they were going to, here's the reality, I think, if they were going to, do whatever they wanted to do to Iran, they've waited too long. Iran is far too strong for that. And so what does that mean? That means, to sum up everything that Scott was saying, the price is too high. Not saying they won't. I mean, are they crazy enough to do it? It's possible. I think if they do it, it just about ends the empire, because surely the Iranians will close the Straits of Hormuz. Now, it looks like that could be nuanced. There's some talk that the Iranians may do something similar to what the Houthis did, which is to say, ships, our friends, you can go through. Our enemies, you can't go through, things of that nature. So they do have some ability to nuance it. But the bottom line is, closing the Straits of Hormuz slams the door on Donald Trump of any prayer, which he doesn't have much now, but any prayer of holding on to anything during the midterms, with the market already in free fall right now. I mean, not completely in free fall, but let's just say it's very it's weak. It's in deep trouble. Any kind of a major economic event right now that would be negative, I think, would just pull the rug out from under the things, and you'd see a very, very serious you just see a very, very serious economic event going on. Bad, with layoffs and with increased prices and all of those things. Do you really want to go into the summer, heading into the summer, with economic disaster on your hands, and based on attacking a country that most of Americans were opposed to anyway, and then a bunch of dead soldiers coming home? I mean, if one ship gets hit, one small ship, 300 or 400 people could die. But if Iran holds on to their word and says, you know what, all of the ships out there, all of those ships will be targeted, and there will be salvos of missiles coming at everyone. This is a potential military disaster and a potential defeat. Not saying that I know it'll be a defeat, but when you attack a country and you imply that you are the superpower, that also implies that you can do whatever they want. You can have your way with them. If you punch a guy smaller than you, and you get in a fight and you end up with a black eye and a busted lips and you're looking just as bad as he is, the reality is that he wins. So I'm with Scott. With Scott, anything could happen, but I don't think they attack Iran because the price is too high, far too high at this point. We see Russia and China sending ships in the area. We know that they're giving help. The last thing I'll say, one other thing I think that is important, this business about negotiations. What are they going to negotiate? They're going to negotiate about negotiating. They've said, Iran, you must do A, B, and C. And Iran has said, no possibility of that. If you want to talk to us on an equal basis, we're happy to do that. But as far as your demands, those are a no. So what are they going to negotiate about? We're making demands and they're saying, no, that's not a negotiation. Are we negotiating about what we're going to negotiate about? I don't know. But these aren't negotiations.
Well, Scott, Axios had this report I wanted to show you to talk about the Israeli side of things and its role right now in all of this chaos with regard to Iran. Of course, we have to take this with a grain of salt. A lot of Axios reports comes from intelligence, unnamed officials, and sometimes it can be just outright false. But there was a report about what Donald Trump was doing in the lead up to what was supposed to be another attempted strike on Iran that was pulled back due to the air defense issue, as you said, Scott. But it says right here that to Washington went many Israeli Defense Forces chiefs and intelligence officers. We had Chief of Staff General Eyal Zamir going to Washington as to brief Raising Cane on Israel's offensive and defensive plans in the event of a war. And after that meeting, it did not change the president's mind about a strike. It's really the Israelis who want to strike. The president is just not there. What do you make of there's been a lot of, I feel like, psychological operations when it comes to Israel's role in all of this. We were told that they wanted Trump to hold off, and now we're being told that Israel really, really, really wants Trump to go all in. What have you made of Israel's role in all of this, and why there seems to be an accelerated attempt by them to get the Trump administration to strike?
Well, let me just call bullshit on Axios real quick. Let me just remind everybody that it was Benjamin Netanyahu who picked up the phone screaming and crying like a bitch, begging for Donald Trump to intervene to stop the 12-day war that Benjamin Netanyahu started, because basically the Iranians had his number. They were dialing in with their best missiles, and there was nothing that could stop them, and they were assassinating the state of Israel. So Netanyahu said, please, please, Donnie, baby, step in and help me out. And Donnie cooked up his little face-saving mechanism. The Iranians bought it because they were hurt, and they wanted the war to stop. But they were killing Israel. And Israel today knows that there is no solution to the Iranian missile problem. That's why they've said we can take 700. We'll take that pain, but you have to kill them. You have to kill Iran. And, don't start it if you can't kill it. And so the Israelis are, going in there testing the waters, but I can guarantee you 100% that if Israel isn't confident that Donald Trump can carry out a killing blow, they're not going to let the United States attack because it would be the end of Israel. And so I just, there's a lot of politics going on. Netanyahu has to, play politics, but I'll just come down to the bottom line. Donald Trump, he may have sold his soul to the Zionists, but he's an American politician. And there's not an American politician alive that's going to sacrifice their political viability for the state of Israel. All right. Israel is, a tool used by American politicians, and Israel uses American politicians as a tool because their goals are, mutually supportive. But when Israel becomes a political problem, Israel gets cast aside. And Donald Trump is not going to sacrifice not only his political future, but his personal future by getting involved in a war that will cost him his presidency. What I mean by that is, if Trump doesn't win, just, hold on to the House and the Senate in the midterms, his presidency is over. Loses the House, he'll be impeached every week of the year. That's just the reality. Whether the impeachment's justified or not, who cares? The Democrats don't care. They're just going to impeach. And that'll tie Donald Trump up. And if he loses the Senate, there could be an issue because, believe it or not, even Republicans believe in the Constitution. And if Trump goes out and starts acting like a dictator and saying the Constitution doesn't matter, there are Republicans out there who will say it does matter. And then they get the 60 votes, and then Donald Trump's convicted. And then he goes to jail. This is the stakes that we're talking about here. Trump ain't going to bomb Iran because Trump's going to lose the presidency, and there's nothing Israel can say to change that. So all this Axios stuff is just mental warfare. It's a mind game, probably put it out there so Benjamin Netanyahu can save face. What he wants to be able to do is say, I was telling Trump to attack, but it was Trump's decision, not mine. When the reality is, it's just like what happened at the end of the 12-day war. Benjamin Netanyahu, the little wimpy bitch that he is begging the United States not to start a fight they can't finish. And that's the reality.
Yeah. Garland, your thoughts? We're in this so-called negotiations. A lot of people are concerned about these talks, but they're coming, it seems like, on different circumstances, because the last time the Israel and the United States struck Iran during the feigning of talks, it was a surprise. But now there's been no surprises. There's been multiple attempts or expected strikes on Iran. Didn't happen, and now there are talks. Seems like the conditions are quite different. Anything you want to comment with regard to what Scott said and this?
Yeah, and regarding the talks, I think you have to compare them to the talks in Ukraine for this reason. We're looking at a new world. We're looking at a world that is, well, you can call it multipolar. Some could call it bipolar, where, say, the China, the Eurasian, shall we say, foundation of the other pole, or whatever you want to put it as one side and the U.S. is the other side. But here's the bottom line. And you see that a lot in the Senate, and particularly in Congress. And that is people that don't realize that they're not as powerful as they used to be. It's like the guy that used to push his little brother around, and now his little brother is 6'4" and 240 pounds, and he's still only 5'11", and he can't push that brother around anymore. So my point being, in both of those, the U.S. is trying to act like the hegemon, is trying to assume the position of the hegemon. Russia, you will take these. And Russia said, no, we're not. And by the way, we're kicking butt, and we'll take what we want. And we don't have to negotiate with you. We don't have to take your terms. We will take what we want, and there's nothing you can do about it, which means you're not the hegemon. You ain't calling the shots anymore. And as long as the U.S. doesn't put that to the test and doesn't try to force Russia into doing something, it's not at, it's kind of in the ether, and everybody's like, well, you can't really tell them what to do anymore, but it's not solid and concrete out there. There's some plausible deniability, shall we say. They're in the same boat with Iran. They're saying to Iran, here's our demands. And Iran said, no, and you can't make me. And you know good and damn well you can hurt me. But as I keep saying this, but the price will be too high and you might lose. So what we're seeing now is that the world has changed. The U.S. does not have the economic. They tried to use their economic power to destroy Russia. They went up against China, and China said, yeah, we'll just cut you off from this and that, and we'll stop selling you that, and we'll do all of this. And the U.S. had to back down. So they're not the economic hegemon. China has shown that. They're all of the actions they tried to take against Russia economically didn't work. So the world realizes they're not the economic hegemon. Militarily, NATO has been defeated by Russia, and they're just cleaning up the mess right now. They're just finishing it off, but this thing is done. And they're trying to dictate in a way of domination to Iran, and Iran saying, not anymore. That's not the way the world works anymore. And if you try us, you'll find out. So that's what really we're looking at, a new world where the U.S. has to, one way or another, either adjust to or find out the hard way if they start punching Iran, that they can't kinetically or economically or politically dominate people anymore. Maybe some small country that's impoverished, yeah, they can push them around. But the countries that have some horsepower, they're not listening to them anymore. And that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, and Scott, with regard to these talks, we've seen Iran, get show quite a lot of confidence in their approach to them. With Abbas Araghchi saying that the talks are in a fight. Yeah, I wanted to ask you, Scott, about this because Iran has been showing a lot of confidence. They've been saying that they're going into this to only express their interests and only really to talk about the question of nuclear energy and their nuclear capabilities, nothing else, despite all of the questions Abbas Araghchi has received about proxies and missiles. What have you made about Iran's approach to the Trump administration's, readiness, as they called it, for talking with Iran?
Well, again, I just think that we have to not look at this from the traditional standpoint of negotiations. This is about American domestic politics. Okay? Donald Trump isn't going to the negotiating table because he wanted to negotiate. Donald Trump's going to the negotiating table because he can't achieve the knockout blow, and he's boxed himself into a corner. And rather than be somebody who's accused of being weak, he has to come out and say he's strong, peace through strength. So he's created a scenario that says, I pressured Iran to the table, I will get a deal. That is the political framing of this. This isn't about honest to goodness, real negotiations, because there's nothing to negotiate, as you said. Iran hasn't been compelled to do this. Iran has said, hell no. But now, the Iranians, we also have to understand the following. While Iran can hurt Trump's presidential aspirations, in terms of viability for the remaining part of his term, Iran can't kill the United States. Isn't going to happen. The United States can and probably would kill Iran. It would be very hard, but if we put the totality of our resources together, that would be it for Iran. And the Iranians know that. So Iran's not rushing to a fight. They're not backing down. They're not kneeling. They're not surrendering. But they recognize they've been given an opportunity here to buy time. Because you can't trust Trump. You can't trust the United States. The United States has proven that. But what you can do is buy time so that you can strengthen your own capabilities, get your own air defense bolstered up. Right now they have MiG-29s and Su-27s upgraded, provided by Russia to compensate until they get the Su-35s that they're promised. Those haven't shown up yet. So, you don't want to go to war with one hand tied behind your back. You're going to buy time. So Iran's in the business of buying time. The other thing about buying time is, the United States right now is on a trajectory towards entrenching in Fortress America. The whole national security strategy is about delinking yourself from the Middle East, because the Middle East is where you get entangled in decades-long wars that cost you trillions of dollars and accomplish nothing but killing Americans. Remember, we spent a lot of money to kick the Taliban out, only to give Afghanistan back to the Taliban 20 years later. So we got rid of Saddam Hussein only to lose total control of the country. Now we have Maliki, coming back in, even though we tried to get rid of him 20 years ago. We don't succeed in the Middle East. We don't. And we want to delink. We want to disengage. That's Trump's inclination to withdraw and focus on Fortress Europe. There's the old saying, when the enemy's doing what you want him to do, let him do it. Even help him along if you can. So these negotiations are designed to help facilitate the withdrawal of America and to prevent a war. So I do think that the Iranians are going to negotiate. I don't think they're giving up their ballistic missiles, but what they may say is, before we talk about ballistic missiles, we have to talk about a regional security framework that's inclusive of the totality of the military capacity in the region, such as, America, you got to get the hell out, because the only reason why we're here talking to you is because we got missiles. If we didn't have missiles, we wouldn't be talking to you. You'd be bombing us. And if we didn't have missiles, Israel would be attacking us. So we got missiles because of you. If you want us to get rid of missiles, we have to talk about you and them, the Israelis. And that opens the door. That doesn't mean anything's going to happen. But what the Iranians did there is they didn't take missiles off the table. They put missiles on the table and put some heavy caveats there. And there's some whispers out of Tehran that that's approach that may be taken. On regional security, again, why does Iran support Hezbollah? Because Israel's occupying Lebanon. All right, if you want Hezbollah to stop being a threat to Israel, get Israel out of Lebanon. These are simple things. If you want the Houthi to stop bombing Israel, get Israel to stop committing genocide in Gaza. So the Iranians can put that on the table as well. But the real killer is nuclear, because the Iranians are trying to pivot to the east. And here's where I think Russia's coming in. The Russians have tried this in the past, and people have to remember, Iran shot itself in the foot before the 12-day war, because Russia had this nice little mutual security agreement up there that they negotiated in January. The Russians had signed, ratified, they're ready to rock and roll, and the Iranians sat on it. And then they got bombed in June, and they suddenly went, oh, this is a good idea, and suddenly the parliament ratifies it. Well, it's in play today. Now, it's not a mutual defense agreement, meaning that Russia doesn't come to their aid, but Russia does a lot of things now for Iran. And one of the things Russia's doing is talking about putting, Russian nuclear power plants on the ground in Iran, and providing Iran with the fuel for these nuclear power plants, and basically reducing the impetus for Iran to have a nuclear enrichment program. The compromise here will be something that was supposedly on the table before the United States committed perfidy, and allowed Israel to decapitate the Iranian negotiating team. The Iranians would retain enough of an enrichment program to save face, because this is their national pride. They need to be able to say that we have to be allowed to do what Article 4 of the Non-Proliferation Treaty allows us to do. But not enough that people could say, oh, it's a weaponization program in disguise. Iran, I continue to say this, and the Iranians, most of them agree, it was a mistake to go to 60%. I know why they did it. It was to create leverage, but all you did is create the fact that the world can now accurately perceive you as a nuclear threshold state. And that was a large reason why the U.S. felt justified in working with Israel to strike Iran, because of the 60% enriched uranium. I think that can be given away now. There's no need to hold on to this. It can go on the table. You can get rid of it. And, right off the bat, you've brought the threshold of a concern down. I think there's a lot of latitude here on the nuclear side for Iran to negotiate with the United States to give Donald Trump the deal he desperately is looking for. It's not going to be everything he wants, but it's enough to shut the door on military action at this point in time, and further open the door to BRICS, to Russia and China. I mean, Donald Trump shot himself in the foot on Venezuelan oil. China bought 4% of their oil from Venezuela, and Trump, using the CIA, took control of that. And then he told the Chinese, "You can buy it from us, but I get the money." And the Chinese went, "No thanks. Hey, Iran, will you take up the shortfall?" And Iran's now selling China the oil and doing all right. Iran needs to be focused on Russia and China, Russia and China, Russia and China. As I told an Iranian earlier today, there's too many Iranians to keep looking to the United States as if we're your friend. There's too many Iranians to keep looking to the West as if the West is their friend. It's abused wife syndrome. It's basically a woman who is abused, who keeps turning back to the abusive husband because somehow she believes that he still loves her. I tried to tell the Iranians over and over again, we don't love you. We don't like you. We hate you. That's just the reality of it. There's individuals that may like you and view, but collectively, the United States hates Iran, despises you. We will never forgive you for what you did in taking over our embassy. We will never forgive you for holding Americans hostage. We will never forgive you for creating the conditions in which 8 Americans had to be killed at Desert One to rescue the hostages you took. I don't want to hear anybody say, well, America should have got in. Fuck you. They took our guys hostage. They went over the walls. They took Americans hostage 444 days. You think they're going to be forgiven? No. And so we will never forgive Iran, not the theocracy, not until everybody involved in that dies out. And that's going to be a couple more generations. So stop looking to the West to be your friend. We're not. We're never going to be your friend. We will always want to bomb you. We will always want to remove your regime. So why not hang out with your real friends, the Russians and the Chinese? Why not focus your economy on Central Asia? And I think that's the direction Iran has to go. They have to view these negotiations as a way of stopping the American potential for political justification of a strike and create more opportunities to become the BRICS member they should be, a full-on member of the Eastern cartel.
Yeah, Garland, any comments?
Yeah, I'm with Scott in that I think that any deals that the Iranians get involved with the U.S. has to be secured by the Russians and or the Chinese, most likely the Russians because they're closer and they have a much more a storied history, shall we say, in that region. I think they understand. I mean, look what Hegseth said. It's about power. Look what Stephen, what's his name, Miller said, Steve Miller, whatever his name is. It's about power. Basically, if we have the power to take it, we should. If you can't defend it, then you lose it. It's the law of the jungle to these people. But a lot of people have been freaked out by that. But I've said, well, I've been paying attention to the U.S. for many, many years, and that seems to have been a long-running, way of doing things. They're just open about it now. So that being the case, when someone tells you, look, I can do what I want as long as I have power, that's telling you that you can't make a deal with these people. You have to have someone secure the deal that it's powerful enough that they won't attack that person. Well, I think, or that entity, I think that Russia and China have both demonstrated economically and militarily that they're strong enough to make the U.S. balk and back off and not want to go toe-to-toe with them. So I think what would be a faux deal anyway, to me, it would be a fake deal. If they get to negotiate with the U.S., to me, it's fake negotiations because they know the U.S. empire wants to take them out. They know they want to destroy them. They want to take them over so they can get in the back door to go after Russia. They want to take them over so they can cut off China's oil. We can't overlook the grand chessboard part of this where the neocons see, and the Wall Street people see Russia as part of this worldwide chessboard so they can maintain or regain their hegemony. There's that part of it that has nothing to do with Iran and whether or not they have nukes or missiles. It has to do with how can we gain Iran as a player on the chessboard to be used against other countries. That being said, the only possibility I think is that Russia is in this and that the deal basically really any deal is with Russia and not with Iran. So that if they break the deal with Russia, Russia has ways of dealing with it. Ideally, we don't want anything, kinetic. But the bottom line is that's what I think. The deal has to be probably in all likelihood with Russia, not with Iran, because they'll never keep a deal with Iran or anyone else other than probably Russia and China. And you'll be lucky to get them to keep a deal with Russia and China. But at least Russia and China have the horsepower to deal with any violations of agreements. more so than Iran or a smaller country.
Yeah. Well, Scott, I wanted to ask you if you could help our audience understand some of the capabilities we were talking about amid the U.S.'s buildup around Iran that has led to this moment. Donald Trump has said a lot of things, even during the so-called talks that are supposed to happen. But here's one of them, and then maybe you can help describe what are the balance of forces that we're really seeing, given your understanding of what the U.S. has sent there and Iran's capabilities. Here's just something Donald Trump said.
Right now, we're talking to them. We're talking to Iran, and if we could work something out, that'd be great. And if we can't, probably bad things will happen.
And then he said this.
Ships heading to Iran right now, big ones, biggest and the best. And we have talks going on with Iran. We'll see how.
So a very repetitive kind of mantra. The U.S. has a lot going still to Iran, he says, despite intimating toward talks. So, Scott, could you help the audience understand what the U.S. has built around Iran and what are Iran's capabilities that are causing a lot of consternation about actually going through with the strike?
Let's reverse it. Iran can destroy every American military base in the region. So that's why there's consternation. There's not enough air defense. I just, again, want to remind people what the United States is doing right now is taking THAAD and Patriot 3 missile batteries from Asia, Europe, some continental United States, and deploying it to the Middle East because they weren't there. And it was like, well, isn't that enough? We had THAAD and Patriot 3 in Israel, backed up by Aegis ships offshore, integrated in with Israel's, Iron Dome and Arrow 3, David Sling, the whole thing, fully integrated ballistic missile shield, most advanced in the world. And the Iranians beat it. So what we're doing right now is trying to send air defense capability to the region to protect our exposed bases that's already been proven insufficient to the task. We don't have enough ships with Aegis SM-3s, SM-6s. We don't have enough THAAD batteries. We don't have enough Patriot batteries. And if we did have them, they're not good enough to stop the most advanced Iranian missiles from coming in. And this is the reality. So the key here, to the defense is, look, we're going to end up evacuating most of these bases as it is because we don't want to send, the Iranians have set the pain threshold at 500 American dead. They're saying that if this happens, we're going to kill at least 500 Americans because they made the calculation that that's the threshold of pain that the president can't survive politically. They need to be careful, though. I just want to point this out. There was a book written a couple years ago by a former NATO American, I think Stennis, or I don't know what his last name is, but he wrote a book about potential war with China. And this is a guy who knows. He knows the war plans. And so the scenario was that an American carrier battle group went to the South China Sea, and the Chinese sunk the carriers. And what did the United States do? Doctrine said we had to take out a Chinese city with a nuclear weapon. Why? Because the carrier battle group is a strategic asset, and we can't just let anybody take it out. It's a legacy system, but it's one that we rely upon for power projection. And if suddenly the truth is exposed about the vulnerability of the American aircraft carrier battle group, we lose a lot of capability because all we have to do is threaten to send it there and the world takes notice. Iran could very well sink the Abraham Lincoln. I mean, that's why the United States is shooting down the drone as it approaches, because we know that. If they sink the Abraham Lincoln, Iran will receive a nuclear weapon in response. That's doctrine. That's just the way it is. You don't get to sink an American aircraft carrier and walk away from it. People say, Scott, you don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, I do. I actually do know what I'm talking about. And so do the other people who do this. You don't get to sink an American aircraft carrier. That's a line that you don't want to cross. So Iran has to be careful about casualties, because you sink an aircraft carrier, it gets really tough. I don't think the United States is going to preempt Iran with nuclear weapons, although he's talking about we're sending the biggest I don't know what that means. It's Donald Trump, as big as his hands, maybe. But what are we going to send? B-2 bombers, F-35s, F-22s. We know that. Maybe the B-21 Raider will make its debut. That's just an upgraded B-2. We could send Ohio-class submarines with Trident missiles that have kinetic penetrators, non-nuclear kinetic penetrators. And the angle of flight would be that they don't overfly any nuclear-armed nations. Therefore, we don't run the risk of people thinking that they're being attacked. It'll be a flat trajectory launch. That's one way, because it's not about buried nukes anymore. It's about buried leadership. The Iranians have been going underground for a long time. In Mashhad, there's an underground city where they take the leadership there, and other locations as well. And it's designed to ride out, even a low-level nuclear attack. So we may use these kinetic killers to take out underground sites. B-2s with a lot of cruise missiles. We're people also need to wake up. How many cruise missiles did we fire at the Syrian chemical weapons research facility, even though it wasn't a chemical weapons research facility? I think the number was around 60 or so. 60 to destroy one building. About 20 of those didn't work. Many of those actually were downed by electronic warfare, and the Syrians captured them, turned them over to the Russians intact. The most advanced Tomahawk missiles were turned over to the Russians intact. That means the Russians have deciphered its capabilities, and now that they have a signed agreement with the Iranians, they've given that to the Iranians as well. There might be some new tricks up our sleeve, but there's not enough of them. Donald Trump is a bully. So he's going to sit there and say bully things. But at the end of the day, Iran is a big country. And there's a lot of targets, and we don't have enough weapons to hit these targets. They've dispersed their missiles, dispersed their leadership. Again, their ballistic missiles are their knockout blow. The Iranians have said that they will strike the furthest point from which American airplanes, assets that attack Iran are based. So right now, that means they're going to be striking European bases with missiles that Europe can't shoot down. That's just the facts. Nobody's ready for this. Nobody's ready for about what's to happen. In the past, we've bombed Iran and got away with it. That's what Trump did. We sent the B-2s in, they hit Fordo and they hit some other places, Natanz. And Iran sent, a half a dozen missiles to a base that was already evacuated. Many of those missiles were the old missiles that got shot down. I think one or two of them were the new missiles that made it through, took out the $100 million radar, just to prove a point that we can do this and there's nothing you can do to stop us. And that's the point that has sunk home. And there it is. I don't think we have any deep, dark super weapons. I think what we are concerned about is the vulnerability of the Abraham Lincoln. This isn't the Houthi. The Iranians have missiles that have been designed to take out an aircraft carrier. My advice to the Iranians is don't do it. Don't do it. But if you do it, be prepared for the worst. But the United States is in the position of, if they take it out, maybe we blow Iran off the face of the earth. But now what's happened is the Iranians have proven a point that many people have been making for some time now, that the carrier is an obsolete weapon system that is just a sitting duck for any nation that has real capability, like China, like Russia. So, there, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, Garland, do you have any comments and thoughts about this? Because Scott just laid out some pretty terrifying stakes, nuclear stakes.
A couple of things. And I think what he said is very important to consider and to go deep into a little bit. Number one, what did China say? They said, if anybody, and I forgot which one of the guys were, their foreign minister, whoever, say, if somebody, starts a war with us or attacks us, they'll get a war. If someone uses a nuclear weapon against us, we'll ensure they won't survive. So if you say, okay, they took out a carrier, I'm going to throw some nukes at one of their cities. that point wherever. What you basically said is this: the U.S. Doctrine is this: if one of our carriers goes down, that's it for the world. We will end the world. We will make sure all 330 million Americans and everybody else die if we lose one carrier, because that's essentially what it is. You start throwing nukes at a superpower, they're going to start throwing nukes back, and that's game, set, and match. We're all going to die. So that's the first part of it. That shows a certain level of weakness to say, I can stick a carrier out there and nobody's allowed to hit it. And so let's just hope everybody plays by those rules, or I'll swallow a suicide pill. And let's hope that, and it's a possibility, let's hope that doesn't happen. Number two, it's kind of like a person with self-defense training against edged weapons. Your instructor will say, you're probably going to get cut and you might die, but go out like a soldier, right? That's what a lot of them say, so it's an edged weapon and very dangerous. And these are all the things you can do. But if somebody knows what they're doing, you're probably going to get cut and you might die, but make sure, try to take them with you. In other words, fight for all you're worth. Only fight if you're cornered. Here's my point. If we say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and Iran says, we're going to throw everything we have at you. If you so much as throw a rock at us, we're throwing everything we have at you. And you have to say, well, they probably won't throw anything at our aircraft carriers because we might nuke them. But if they've said, we've said our prayers and our religion believes in martyrdom, and it is what it is, you throw that every ship you have, not just your aircraft carrier, there will be salvos of missiles coming at anything we see with an American flag on it. It's going to get 100 drones at it and a salvo of 12 missiles, every single one of them. So that's done. Every one of your bases done. We've told you, if you fight us, you may nuke us, you may do whatever, but you're going to be so ragged when you leave out here. Here's my point. As I said earlier, it'll end the empire. I don't mean that they could blow our cities. I mean, if the U.S. takes that kind of an action, if the U.S. takes that kind of pain, how the heck, what do you say to the American people then? Oh, by the way, American people, there's nuclear fallout all over the Middle East, so no one can access that oil anymore. So you better get used to see what it looks like in Kiev. Yeah, that's what it's going to look like. You're going to be frozen and freezing. You're going to be starving. Your lives are going to be moved back into the Stone Ages because of so the America as you knew it, it's all over. We're going back into the Stone Ages. We made that decision because we attacked Iran first, and they had every right to fight back. And yeah, we defeated them in a suicidal kind of way. So you're looking at an empire that's basically saying, we might have to commit suicide over this. And the American people ain't on board with that. So it's a very dangerous situation. But the actions of the United States, particularly in a region full of oil, you start throwing nukes around and the fallout, Pakistan's got nukes. What is the rest of the world going to say if there's nuclear fallout drifting, God only knows where? It could drift all over Europe, Russia, anywhere. So it's a very bad situation. That's again why I agree with Scott's first assessment. We could both be wrong. I don't think, particularly with Trump, I don't think Trump is going to pull the trigger on this. I don't think, he may not be the one making the decisions, but for the sake of argument, let's say that he has at least a lot of input, or he's making the decisions. If you look at his record, he'll beat up on the little guys. Donald Trump doesn't want to engage in a long war that he's going to take a lot of heat off. So I don't think he does it. All the things that we're talking are horrific, unthinkable potential repercussions. Again, I don't think Trump does it for the discussion that we're having.
Yeah, and Scott, a question on this: does the United States have the air defenses to shore up Israel, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain? I mean, there's a long list of countries that are almost kind of on their hands and knees saying we need this before you can do anything to Iran. Do they have enough? Does the United States have enough of these? Are there any problems that could arise from this effort to shore these allies or vassals or whatever we want to call them up?
We don't have enough of them, and the ones we have don't work, not the way we want them to work. So, I mean, this is the real problem. And it's time the American people wake up to the fact you've fallen victim to a propaganda campaign waged against you by the U.S. government. The Patriot system doesn't work, not the way it's advertised. It's it's linked to, I think, the old safeguard system. The anti-ballistic missile system that we spend a lot of money developing for the 1960s, 70s for the anti-ballistic missile treaty made it go away. But rather than when the U.S. Army said it needed a theater, anti-air defense missile, rather than build it from scratch, the defense contractors do what defense contractors do. They take the technology and then they bring it over and they adapt it so they can save their research costs, charge maximum money, make maximum profits. The Patriot just sucks as a system. It's fundamentally flawed in the whole way it approaches the problem because it takes legacy technology from the 1970s, 60s, and 70s and tries to adapt it. And we've been tinkering with it ever since, doing update after update after update after update. It doesn't work the way it's supposed to work. And the Russians have solved this problem. Just ask the Ukrainians. They're not shooting down the Russian missiles. And the Russians have shared their solutions to the Iranians. The Iranians have been following. Remember, they have some very good intelligence service. Ask yourself how they kidnapped the Beast of Kandahar, the RQ, whatever it was, the big B-2 looking stealth drone. The Iranians hijacked it. It took off, and the Iranians intercepted the signal, took it over, and brought it in and landed it. To do that, they had to solve a bunch of decryption problems. They had to develop the technology. They did it. The Iranians are the ones that got the Hezbollah to be able to break into Israeli tactical frequency hopping radio systems so that they could in real time collect it, decrypt it, and then speak into it, mimicking the voices of the Israelis. Nobody thought that was possible. So when an Israeli voice, it sounds like Captain so-and-so, gives the code word to initiate the attack, the Israeli commandos initiated the attack and went straight into an ambush. Ask them about it, 2006 war. The Iranians are really, really good. They always score top at the global mathematics Olympiads. So these are people who have solved a whole bunch of problems. And they've solved the issue of how to defeat American air defense. They collected a whole bunch of intelligence. I mean, again, they're not stupid. They tickled the system. They were playing games in the end. At the beginning, when they were launching, it was a reaction because they had gotten hit hard, so they're just throwing back while so once they got their feet on the ground, notice that the missile war changed. It became a much more directed thing. What they were doing is collecting intelligence. They were saying, let's try this combination. Boom, 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 boom. How are they doing? Boom, boom, boom. We got it. Okay, let's try this. Yep, tickle that one. Okay, we take that out, take that out. Okay, now come in with the one. Nothing gets it. Boom. Okay, we solved that problem. Let's move on. They did a whole bunch of intelligence collection. They did a whole bunch of problem solving. The Russians are pouring data into them. They're pouring data into the Russians, by the way. We don't have an air defense solution to the Iranian ballistic missile problem. This is a 100% certainty, and Israel certainly doesn't have one either. And the Iranians have been developing newer technology. They've taken all that intelligence collection data that they did, and they've done. Now, the Israelis and the Americans also collected intelligence. There's missile debris all over Israel, and I know this is a fact because I worked with the Israelis who collect missile debris during Desert Storm, and I know what they do with it. I know how they exploit it. They're very effective, and you can learn a lot from missile debris. And so I'm sure they've taken that, but then you need to upgrade an already defective system. So you learn something, but now you got to go to the Patriot and upgrade it. So you modify it's just a bad, broken system. THAAD is more modern, but again, very limited in what it can do and what it can't do, and it's older technology. Remember, we don't have any cutting edge technology out there. The Israelis are deploying some sort of laser thing that won't last, trust me. And there's just nothing there that can defend American bases from a concerted, directed Iranian ballistic missile attack.
Yeah, Garland,
I'd like to throw something else in. To quote Joseph Stalin, quantity has a quality of its own. And one of the things that the Iranians learned, and they have talked about, not much lately, but I can recall earlier the Iranians saying, well, this starts back, we're going to throw 2,000 missiles at Israel in the first 2 days, 1,000 missiles a day. So, one of the issues is not just the issue of technology and technical capacity of these missiles and the technical capacity to shoot them down. One of the things that's been learned is that if you throw enough drones, they can be slow. And some of them are duds, and some of the missiles are, we've seen the Russians do the dud missiles, cardboard drones, you name it. But what you do is you throw so many things at someone that you overwhelm their system. And you know what the Iranians are thinking? Well, you know what? If you ran out in 12 days last time, if we throw that number of missiles and drones at you in the first 3 days, you're going to be in trouble. So clearly the Iranian strategy, I mean, you don't have to be a military strategist to figure this out, that if it starts, they know we got to throw everything we can. And a lot of them can be half-stabbed with, old missiles, whatever we got. In the first 4 or 5 days, we exhaust your supplies of air defense missiles, because air defense missiles generally are a minimum of 2 to 1. For every missile that's fired. But you got missiles coming in, and you remember those pictures, the skies lit up with drones. So regardless or notwithstanding the ability of these technical ability of these systems to shoot down Iranian missiles, just the sheer numbers that the Iranians can put in the sky and the strategy that they've learned means that you can't last but so long. And what happens? What happens 6 days out? And you're like, oh, crap, we're all out of missiles. Then you call the Iranians. Hey, remember that 12-day thing? Well, it's 6 this time. Can we stop it? What happens if the Iranians say, oh, no, I don't think so. We're just going to keep throwing. We're not answering the phone this time. Last time we answered, but not this time. And what does it come down to? Well, if you don't stop bombing me, I nuke you. And again, you start throwing nukes. You're in the U.S. empire. You don't know where that goes. So there's the issue of just pure numbers that cannot be overcome by we don't have enough missiles, and we couldn't have enough missiles because they've discovered that, forget the missiles, I can outdo you with drones.
Yeah, well, I wanted to actually raise that to you, Scott, maybe your final comment on this before, because I definitely want to talk about New START in Russia before we run out of time here. But your final thought on this, because what Garland just said, actually, there's been a lot of commentary in the media, including Israeli media. Jerusalem Post wrote that Iranian drone swarms, cheap drones, pose a threat to U.S. ships, even the USS Abraham Lincoln. And I'm wondering, you mentioned the dangers of sinking a ship that could go nuclear because the U.S. cannot take such a hit. But do you believe that Iran would, because they have a lot of drones? I don't know what the number is, the estimated number. Of course, stockpiles and weapons numbers are often not publicized. But I'm curious if this could be one of the ways that Iran addresses this issue of the Trump administration's proclaimed armada, sending hundreds of drones toward them. What do you make of this?
It could be, but I, again, want to caution people that, the United States, I know there's a lot of people out there that just hate the United States. A lot of people in your chat hate America. I see it. And they just despise the United States. I'm not saying they don't have just cause, but, we're not asleep at the wheel. The carrier battle group has, EA-6, I guess they call them prowlers or growlers, growlers, the electronic warfare planes that have developed. They've been working on how to, blow out the electronics of systems that come in. And you get a slow flying drone in a swarm of them, we're going to be out there just blasting their electronics before they even come in. So we'll be blowing them out of the air, frying their electronics, dumbing them down. CIWS, these ships have these automatic, miniguns that put out a very high rate of fire, linked to, right. It's just not going to be. I don't think the drone, because it's slow, is the one. The mass cruise missile attack, when you factor in speed, then you're dealing mass missile attack, speed. Speed is the key. But if you're coming in with a cloud of insects, they're not going to make it to the carrier battle group. The carrier battle group will have them locked down and blown out of the water. There's too much distance for them to travel. This isn't, no, I'm not worried about the drone swarm, because I actually do think that we have developed a solution for that. We haven't developed a solution for hypersonic, maneuvering warheads. That's a different game. But drones flying in slow. Now I know the people who do this. We've got them wired in. I'm not worried about that.
Yeah, Garland, any final comments on Iran before we move on?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything. I do want to hear what Scott has to say about the, I'm interested to see what Scott has to say. I'm fairly worried about this whole the end of the START treaty, and I didn't want to hear Scott's comment. I'm interested to hear Scott's comments.
Well, let's do this then. Yeah, let's do this, and let's begin then with you, Scott, because now mainstream media, after a long time of not commenting on this, are now paying attention to the fact that the New START treaty is about to expire, and that the Trump administration, Donald Trump himself, doesn't seem too interested in renewing this, has not made any comments indicating interest in this. And of course, this comes along the way of these three-way talks between the U.S., Ukraine, and Russia. Russia still is very much going on the offensive. They keep increasing the impact and volume of their strikes on Ukraine's energy system and movements on the battlefield. So talk about what is going on with the New START treaty and what are the dangers that really belie this development.
I just finished publishing a 3-part series on my Substack about the anti-ballistic missile treaty. And people say, well, wait a minute, we're talking about New START. Why are you bringing up ABM? Because New START doesn't happen in a vacuum. New START is just the latest manifestation of a legacy of arms control that dates back to the 1960s. John F. Kennedy and Nikita Khrushchev at the end of the October missile crisis in 1962 began to talk about let's end this madness. Let's avoid nuclear war. Let's talk arms control. Well, Kennedy got a bullet in his head, and Khrushchev got kicked out by Brezhnev and Kosygin and company. And they started new dancing partners. Lyndon Johnson had to learn how to dance with Kosygin. They tried, but they weren't able to get through because of Vietnam, because of the Middle East. There was complicating factors. By the time Johnson was ready to sit down with Kosygin, the Russians rolled into Prague, Czechoslovakia. That ended it. So now Richard Nixon rolls in, and now Nixon's dealing with Brezhnev. But by this time, in that meantime, things have happened. Technology's gone crazy. We went from, liquid fueled missiles that take a long time to load up, boom, fuel up, slow flying, to the Minuteman, which is fast, reactive, gone. Missiles didn't have one warhead anymore. We went to MIRVs, multiple independently retargeted reentry vehicles and stuff. And then they would say, well, wait a minute. Now they can, with all these fast missiles with multiple, they can preempt attack. We need a defense. So we start talking about defense, missile defense. Guys, we are reliving history. History repeats itself. I'm just telling you, for all the people out there going, Golden Dome, wow. The Golden Dome is just the modern iteration of the stupidity that we've been trying to pull since the 1960s, when we said we have to be able to defend ourselves from these missiles. What we found is we can't. Not only that, missile defense is extraordinarily expensive. You will be spending a minimum. Back then it was 6 or 7 times. So basically what it cost me to attack you, you will have to spend 6 or 7 times to defend against that one. But when I put multiple warheads on, suddenly you're expensive. We couldn't afford it. And the technology didn't work. We couldn't afford it. And we decided that it was time to stop that arms race. That's what the anti-ballistic missile treaty did. It basically enshrined mutually assured destruction. It made sure that people said, we're not going to carry out preemptive first strikes. And it created stability that allowed us then to roll into what were called strategic arm limitation talks. We had SALT 1, then we had SALT 2. And from SALT 1 and SALT 2, we started moving into intermediate nuclear forces talks, get rid of those missiles, strategic arms reduction talks to get rid of those. You see, all of it's linked. The foundation was you can't win a nuclear war. And once we accept that we can't win a nuclear war, suddenly you see the missile caps come down, because there's no reason to have all these warheads if there's no defenses out there. When you have no ballistic missile defense, you can bring the warheads down, and then you can do other things to make world safe. New START treaty was just the most recent manifestation of that, but it was hampered because a lot of people forget, Ronald Reagan started, destroying this foundation because when he went with SDI, people don't remember in Reykjavik, Iceland, when Gorbachev sat down with Reagan and they sort of went, why don't we get rid of half of all our strategic nuclear weapons, in the next year or so. And then after that, we get rid of them all. They both went, yeah, let's do that. And then, but Gorbachev said, but then you don't need strategic defense initiative. And Reagan went, well, I really want to have it. And Gorbachev said, well, you can't have it because if you have a missile defense shield and we don't have any missiles, then you could build missiles and no, you got to get rid of it. Oh, we missed the opportunity to get rid of all nuclear weapons at that time because of a stupid plan that didn't work. SDI failed because it didn't work. Pie in the sky stuff. Well, Clinton continued it. People sort of forget about old Bill Clinton. And he helped perpetuate the notion of rogue nations and rogue missiles to justify this. North Korea, Iran, we have to have this. And then Clinton went out. George W. Bush came in and he killed the ABM treaty, straight up killed it. And in doing so, he fatally wounded arms control because from that moment on, the Russians went, you can't get rid of ballistic missile defense treaty and then expect us to stay still. And the thing was, the Bush administration went, we don't care. Do what you need to do. See, you lost the Cold War. You're weak. We don't care. We're the United States of America. We're going to do whatever we want. And Putin went, all right, built the most modern missiles that could defeat any air defense system. And that's what they have today. Meanwhile, we just had legacy systems that are now 50 years old and have to be replaced. We can't afford to replace them, all this kind of stuff. But the point is, New START is the last remaining vestige of arms control. To understand the importance of this, when New START was being negotiated in 2009, 2010, the Senate told the Obama administration that they're willing to ratify a New START treaty only if there's no gap between the old START treaty and New START. They said, we've become comfortable with the insights we have into the Russian nuclear deterrence capability so that we can be comfortable reducing these arms because we have inspectors on the ground verification. It makes us feel comfortable. But the moment you stop inspecting, now we don't know and we're no longer comfortable. And when we stop being comfortable, we're going to want to produce more. There's the importance of the treaty, ladies and gentlemen. It's about confidence building. It's about comfort. It's about building upon 3 decades of arms control experience. And when this thing expires, it is over. This isn't about drawing a line and say, okay, well, maybe later on we can start from here. When it's over, it's a complete reset. We go right back to 1968, except now our technology is better. We have more of it. It's going to be more expensive. This is the dumbest thing in the world. This is stupidity personified. If you want to bankrupt the United States, allow New START to expire and get into an arms race with Russia. They've already made the capital expenditures. They've already got the new missiles. They've already got the stuff that beats the next generation. And what we're doing is reinventing SDI, Golden Dome. It won't work. It will never work. And it will cost tens of billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, and it won't work. We're talking about, building, we got the Minuteman III. It's twice the age of the people operating it. And it probably doesn't work as reliably as it should. But the Sentinel missile, we can't afford to do it. You're talking about trillions of dollars to put in a new ballistic missile capability. The Ohio-class submarine is being phased out. Now, the Trident D5 on it's a good missile, but you need a sub. In order to replace the Iowa-class submarine, we have to be able to build new submarines. But our submarine production capability, in order to keep the numbers up, we have to be able to produce, I think, 2.7 submarines a year. We can produce 1.5. We can't even keep up, so we're going to fall back there. Bombers, B-21, very expensive. You want to buy B-21 bombers, you're going to bankrupt. We're about to get ready to get involved in an arms race we can't afford. We're already behind. The Russians have better weapons than we do. Our best bet is to keep it at a cap and then work on, getting it even further reduced. But we have people who don't believe in arms control, people who forgot what it means to, have this treaty. We have people like Christopher Ford, who killed the INF treaty. He accused the Russians of cheating. And the Russians went, we haven't cheated. Here's the missile. Come on in, inspect the missile, and we can test it. We can do what you want to prove it. He went, no. We're not going to send anybody over the test because the test will only prove what the Russians are saying. Really? Yeah, it's going to be it's going to be a fake test. Send me. You can't fake me out. You can't fake the other inspectors out. You can't fake people who've been doing this for a living. Send me. The Iraqis tried to fake me. Couldn't do it because I'm a well-trained arms control inspector who knows what he's doing. But they didn't want to do it because they weren't looking for the truth. They'd already cooked the books, created a lie, and they just wanted to act on the lie. So we got out of the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty. These are the people that populate the arms control community in the United States today. And for so long, they've been telling people the Russians cheat, the Russians do that, the Russians do this, the Russians do that. And the people going, oh, well, then we don't want arms control. Well, now they're waking up because when this treaty ends, you're going to see a whole bunch of people suddenly have their eyes go up and go, whoa, what just happened? Why don't we have we don't have enough money to do what needs to be done. We don't have the technology we don't build missiles anymore. You know who does build missiles over and over again? The Russians. They got the Moscow Institute of Thermal Technology, the former Nadaraja Design Bureau, that is cranking out missile designs. Oreshnik, one of theirs. To follow on to Oreshnik, one of theirs. The next key, they're replacing the Topolim. Theirs, Yars, theirs. They do this. And they have the Vodkins machine building plant that is constantly upgrading its ability to assemble rockets, test new technologies. So if they need to put out a new missile because of something we've done, they can have a missile out there ready to go in 3 to 5 years. Us, we're not going to have a missile out there ready to go for 20 years. And even if we did, it isn't going to work. This is the reality of New START. It's a fatal wound to the United States.
Yeah. Garland, I want to bring you in. All of the think tanks, we see it all across mainstream media. If we're digging for it, they often decry a lot of what Scott is saying, and around especially hypersonic missiles, there's a huge gap. Russia, China, even Iran in the U.S. is just nowhere to be found. What do you make of what Scott said and this big gap that kind of undergirds this arms race that's about to proliferate?
Well, when it comes to the gap, that's one part of it. But the other part of it, I think it was Carl Sagan that said the nuclear arms race is like a bunch of people standing around in gasoline arguing about which one has the most matches. I got 4. I only got 3. I got 12. As soon as somebody lights a match, we all die. So I think that I am for any I am very much in favor of any agreements that start to turn the volume down on the whole nuclear thing. But the fact of the matter is that a big part of this, as we saw in Ukraine, that the biggest part of the military industrial complex, which includes the trillions of dollars that are spent on nuclear war, is money making. So in reality, when it comes to it, we looked at Ukraine and what did we see? They're like, oh, we've got the M777 howitzers, and they put them in there and they're like, you use them 3 or 4 times, the barrel comes to pieces, it starts leaking nitrogen, all these other things. Very expensive. So we make very expensive things that sound great, they look great, they have these incredible specs, but the good thing about them is that they make lots of money for the companies that could make them. And I think, sadly and unfortunately, that's what it gets down to. You've got a bunch of people in these think tanks, and these think tanks that are almost always funded by the military industrial complex, that their economic masters are saying, push for this because, man, we get to build new missiles and we're going to make a fortune. The concept of whether the missiles are ever used to destroy the Earth, that's not part of the conversation, because that's not going to affect their bottom line over the next quarter, or that's not going to affect the fact that they're holding lots of stocks in this company, and they're going to make lots of money from dividends, and their stocks are going to be more valuable, and they'll get richer and richer and richer. The part about us all dying, they don't get to that. So to a lot of the people in the U.S., to the people that are pushing it, they're pushing it because of their pockets and all of the money they're going to have. And again, if the military industrial complex doesn't steal enough from us, they want to steal it all. So we're like, hey, we don't want to die and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, hey, next quarter, I'm going to make a fortune. Woo! That's what this is really about. And half the crap probably won't work anyway. Doesn't work. They don't care. They'd be happy if they made a cardboard cutout of a missile, as long as they all got more money in the next the next quarter. And people like us are worrying about silly things like the existence of humanity and life for our children, grandchildren, what have you. That's the pathetic thing about what we're dealing with here.
Just to reiterate what Garland said here, it's not theoretical, ladies and gentlemen. Read the contract details that were let for Golden Dome. Literally, the companies that are identified in Golden Dome are being given money, and they don't have to provide deliverables. They're just being given money, and it is, go ahead and develop, but we're not going to ask for a deliverable. If you can do something, you can do. We're giving money away to people for free. And if I were the contractor and I received that money, I legally could take this money and just do nothing with it, except sit down and take a napkin and every once in a while drool on it and smear it around and say, oh, I'm thinking about, how Golden Dome could look. And when they come back to me in a year and they go, hey, how's it going? It's not working out. I need more money. This is one of the biggest scams ever being perpetrated, and Congress isn't doing a damn thing about it. Congress put in a law. This is why they did it, because Congress put in a law because Congress finally woke up that defense contractors are corrupt. I'm sorry for all you people who work in defense contractors. Screw you. You're corrupt. You lie to the American people. You underbid. You come in with a low bid on something that you don't have the technology for, but you do the low bid so you get picked. And then you come in and say, well, we've reevaluated and we need to do this, but you need to give us more money. So they up it. And as it goes, the contract explodes. So Congress finally came in and said, we put an automatic stop on contracts that go above, certain percentage levels. I forget the exact percentage. This happened to the Sentinel missile, the new, ground-based deterrence system. They started going in, and within a month, Congress said, stop, you're already blowing through your estimates. And they went, well, we'll go back and reevaluate. They started up again, stop, because basically this is what they're supposed to be spending, and they're going straight up. They stopped it. So now Golden Dome comes in. I'm here to tell you right now that whatever quote that Donald Trump gave you is a straight up lie. It will be orders of magnitude more expensive. Ted Postal tells you why it will be that expensive, because stuff just doesn't work. It can't work. We don't have the technology. We don't have the production facilities. They're talking about building things that we don't even have the production facilities put in place yet to build. But they made these contracts now because if they put in a deliverable, now there's a cost attached to it, and you have to deliver it, but they can't deliver it at the price they've quoted. So Congress would automatically be stopping this as it goes forward. So the solution was this weird contract vehicle where they just give you money and there's no deliverable. There's no accountability. You get to do anything you want with this money. And Palantir is very happy, by the way, because they're one of the contractors that get to do anything with the money they've been given.
Well, final question to both of you as we close out here. What is Scott? You often talk about the context, how much context matters. How much does the context of the Ukraine conflict matter when it comes to this expiring treaty? Because it comes as this conflict, continues onward in Russia's favor, but the Trump administration seems like it's doing everything it can to ignore this fact. What about this context that is surrounding this development?
I don't think this conflict has anything to do with New START. If this was purely a bilateral Russian-United States thing, we would have solved this a long time ago. This is about China. The problem is Trump the idiot and Biden the idiot both said, we're going to support. Remember, Trump had a first term. People tend to forget there was a first Trump term. And during that Trump term, he did a lot of stupid things like tell the Chinese, we're going to back up Taiwan in case of a conflict. We're going to sell them weapons. And Biden did the same thing. We had speakers of the House travel there and treat the Taiwanese as if they were a sovereign state. And China went, that ain't going to happen. So China begins preparing to go to war. And the United States realizes we can't win a conventional war. So, we say, well, if they attack, we have to come in. We may have to use nuclear weapons. And so literally under Donald Trump, the first term, he redid the nuclear weapons employment plan. That is our war fighting plan to reconfigure the American strategic deterrence for a first strike capability against China, a first strike capability. And the Chinese went, well, you can't do that. we're going to respond. So they've upgraded, they've modernized. And what's happened is, as the Chinese go from 200 to 600, where they are now, the United States is looking there going, wait a minute, we got 1,550 cap. Russia has 1,550. China went from 200 to 600. They're probably going up to around 1,000, 1,500. By 2035, with these caps, we're going to have 1,550, and they're going to have, 3,100. That's not good. So right off the bat, you have all the people telling Trump, we have to get rid of New START. We can't live with these caps. We've got to reset we have to recalibrate our nuclear arsenal. So the first thing we're going to do when this expires, watch, mark my words, we're going to remount warheads on the Minuteman III. The Minuteman III was designed for 3 warheads. Because of the New START treaty and the treaties before that, we got rid of MIRVs. Remember those multiple independently because they're destabilizing. So we de-warheaded. We're going to re-warhead. So we have 400 some odd Minuteman, 400 warheads. We're going to go from 400 to 1,200 that quick because they're all in reserve. We didn't destroy them. We just took them off, put them in reserve. The Trident's going to go from 8. I think we have 8 on there now. It's going to go back up to 14. All right. How many Tridents we have multiplied? We're going to go from 1,550 to about 4.5, 5,000 overnight warheads. And suddenly we're going to feel a little bit more comfortable. But then we're going to want to upgrade and modernize. That's why this the other thing we have to watch out with when New START goes, mark my words, Trump is going to be doing a nuclear weapons test before his presidency ends. He's building new nuclear plutonium pits. It's in the defense budget. Read about it, people. And they're going to need to be tested because we need new warhead designs. I don't want to get into the technology of it too much, but let's take a W-76 or W-82 thermonuclear warhead. They're a peanut shape, if you know what a peanut shape is, but basically they're a dual-phase system. You have a fission that goes off, the old standard atomic bomb. It generates a whole bunch of neutrons that come in, and then you get the big hydrogen explosion. To hold these things in place, there's a foam that's used. And that foam isn't just foam, it's foam that contains neutron generators. And the whole design is based upon this foam holding them in place. And then when it goes off, it generates neutrons, creates all the things that you do, and you get the big explosion. Foam deteriorates over time. So now we got all these warheads now. They have this foam, and the foam's deteriorating, which means the weapon ain't going to function the way it's supposed to. But what we found out when we tried to, like with the W-76, all the people that made the foam, they ain't alive anymore. Or they're in a retirement home drooling into a cup. And nobody wrote it down. And even if they wrote it down, it wasn't strict science. It was like the discovery of nylon, It's an accident. Oops, spilled my Diet Coke on something. Damn, what's going on here? Oh, we got something cool here. Let's experiment with that. They got it. These people made a foam that worked, and they made enough of it to make these warheads, and then it was done. They didn't keep the formula, so nobody knows how to make this foam. And so now we're trying to replicate that formula. People reverse engineering it, but we don't know if it's going to work. And so there's a lot of pressure now that we're going to go back up to these warheads, which we need. We need to convince the world that it works. We're not even convinced that it works. We'll be testing underground nuclear tests very soon. And when that happens, the other treaty that's going to go away is the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Dmitry Medvedev has warned about this. Everybody's going to be getting a nuclear weapon. It's the end of capping that. The promise of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty is that the non-nuclear weapon states wouldn't get nuclear weapons if the nuclear weapon states agreed to get rid of theirs. We're going in the wrong direction. We're going to be advancing the number of nuclear weapons, and you're going to see the whole world go nuclear. Thank you, Donald Trump. I'm angry. I'm sorry, but this was my life. This is what I did. I've been doing this kind of arms control since 1988. So for all the assholes in your chat, that was doing it before you were fucking gleaming in your parents' eyes. This is what I've been doing my entire adult life, and it's all gone. It's all gone. And if you think this is a joke, well, maybe you'll have that split second to go, oh, this ain't funny before the flash burns you out and kills you. Because this is the direction we're headed. I wrote a book called Highway to Hell. I picked that title on purpose because we are literally on a highway to hell. I wrote that book in hopes that there could be some pressure created to get the Trump administration to extend New START. That was wishful thinking. And so now New start's over. There will be consequences for this, ladies and gentlemen. You can't just simply say, "Oh, let's extend it." No, once this treaty expires, it's an automatic reset to zero. And we're probably going to go back to resetting the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, because that treaty no longer matters, because the United States is going to violate the commitment it made to reduce its nuclear arsenal. We're going to reverse that and start increasing it. And the moment we do that, throw the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty out the window and welcome everybody who wants a nuclear weapon to have one.
Garland, do you have any final comments? I know that we're running out of time here.
Well, I recall seeing after the 12-day war, I remember seeing, that some people interview some Iranians on the street, and they were saying, "Why don't we get the nukes? That's the only thing," and they look, and let's face it, they haven't attacked North Korea. Now, I don't want them to get nukes. I don't want anybody to get nukes, because I don't want nukes to spread. But the reality is, part of what Scott's saying, combined with the fact that the U.S. is attacking these countries, and so Venezuela's got to be saying, "Well, if we had nukes, they wouldn't have come in and kidnapped our guy." Iran's got to be saying, "If we had nukes, they wouldn't." So the fact that you have the all of these treaties, that the last of them disappearing, and the aggressive nature of the U.S. empire to go around telling, "Well, we'll overthrow you," and Pete Hegseth saying, "Hey," and what's his name, Miller saying, "This is the world we live in, man. If we can take it from you, we will. Screw you. You can't stop us." And people are going to say, "Well, we're small. There's no way we can stop you." Unless we had a nuke, then you can't take it from us. So the combination of no treaties and the threat to say, and basically what Miller basically said is, if you have a nuke, we won't touch you. But if you got a nuke, you're dead meat. That's kind of what he said. I mean, if I'm a small country, that's what I'm thinking. It's like a little guy, and some guy says, "I'm going to beat the hell out of you unless you got a knife or a gun." You have a knife or a gun? No, then I'm going to beat you up. But if you had a knife or a gun, I'd be like, "Nah, I'm not fighting this guy." Well, damn it, of course you're going to have a knife or gun, because that's the only thing that stops you from getting beaten to death. That's where we are.
Well said, Garland. Scott had to run because he had another commitment at 4 p.m. But we can end here, everybody. I want you to make sure that you go to the video description. All the places where you can find Scott and Garland's work are there. You can find Scott's Substack. You can find Garland's YouTube channel there. Hit the like button before you go. Be sure to go to the video description, not only for their work, but also all the places to support this show. I want to thank everyone who gave a super chat today. I won't put all of you up now for time reasons, but just know that I do appreciate it. Again, hit the like button before you go, and I'll be back very soon. Garland, anything that I'm missing here before we go?
I think that's it. And you know how it goes. We'll say, like, they're not going to attack Iran, and then, like, before the show's over, we'll look on trending on Twitter. Right. But I do think we have, the price is real high. I think we hit on some important things that we didn't really talk about, the Epstein stuff. But I will say this. I'll say one thing about the Epstein stuff. Be wary about believing everything in it. I suspect that some of it is a controlled release. I suspect that there's stuff, come on, if you can't trust these people, or you can, if you can't trust them, that means you can't trust that all the stuff in here is true, that likely some of it is released. Maybe they want to take somebody out. They want to leave. They left a lot of stuff out. I'm not going to accept everything in there a priori. That's what I'm going to say. Just like every now and then I'll have a friend who will contact me and say, "Garland, look, I know this is true about whatever. Why? I read it in the New York Times." I'm like, "Well, that's precisely why I know it's not true." So be wary, be skeptical. Look at the release of the Epstein stuff with a jaundiced eye, shall we say?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's I know you've said before, it's like the police investigating themselves when they commit a crime, or it's like Israel investigating themselves when they're committing genocide. We're definitely getting a controlled release, and we don't even know how all of this is actually going down. But what we do know is what it is revealing is absolutely how illegitimate and how absolutely not only corrupt, but how every problem in the world that we talk about, whether it's here or whether it's in other programs that talk about other subjects, there are things going on behind the scenes that are just absolutely reflective of these problems. If the people who control the United States, who actually run the United States in the West, are able to commit genocide in Gaza, able to kill millions of people all around the world, then you know that what they are doing to make that system go is just as abhorrent and disgusting. And that's what we are kind of seeing, I think, in real time. But and we are also seeing how we can get really caught up in what is definitely a controlled release. So nonetheless, everybody, that is all we have today. Hit the like button before you go. Again, video description, Garland and Scott's links where you can support them, where you can subscribe to their channels, and you can help them continue their great work. And then, of course, the same goes for the rest of the links in the video description for this channel, Patreon, Substack, and much more. All right, everybody, I'll be back soon, and I'll let you know when. Until next time, take care and good night.